Well, hello, Kitty. Look who's here. All our fans are out there. Okay, this is going to be in response to an open tag event started by Mark Coffman, I believe. And then I came across it on Knife Detector's channel. I have since watched both of their open tags on this topic. And the topic is I believe it's your top 5 Swiss Army knives, or the top 5 most useful Swiss Army knives. But before I start on that, let me talk a little bit about open tag events in general. Now, I know there are some viewers out there who really don't care much for open tag events, and I get that. But I got to tell you, for YouTube content creators, open tag events can be a lifesaver. If you're stuck trying to come up with a new idea or something, open tag events really can help out the YouTube creator, because it gives them ideas on what to do, and it gets them ideas on how to look at their collection in a different way and present that collection in a different way, and gets a new perspective going on. And if you're stuck looking for an idea or something, if you're a YouTube content creator, type in open tag knives and see what comes up in YouTube. Also, what I do on my channel is I actually create playlists of open tag knives, and I put them in that playlist, ones that I created as well as other YouTubers, so that way, if you're looking for an open tag event, look for the playlist on my page itself on open tags, and see what out there looks interesting to you. But really, it is interesting because it makes you think differently about your collection, and gives you a different perspective on the way you're going to show your knives. Now, my normal way of trying to get down to the top 5 of any brand or pattern or something, it normally comes down to having a couple dozen knives out here, and then sorting through them and telling you how I chose these top 5. And I wasn't even able to do that with this idea, this particular open tag of most useful Swiss Army knives. I've got close to 200 knives that I would be trying to go through, trying to figure out which ones are my most useful, and it just really would not work. The video would drag on for hours and hours, and I would just be flustered and get nowhere. So what I have done instead is I basically set one simple parameter for my choice of my top 5 Swiss Army knives. And the parameter I chose was very simple. What are the 5 Swiss Army knives you have that you have carried the most? Just that simple. Which top 5 Swiss Army knives in my collection that I have carried the most? And you'll see right now that, you see the 5 knives in front of you. I gotta be honest with you, one of them is a little bit of a fudge, but in theory, yeah, this is my top 5 carried Swiss Army knives. Now, the reason I'm saying I'm cheating a little bit is because what we're looking at are basically Victorinox knives, but I also carried these 2 Vingers for a time, probably for a year or two. And the only difference between these knives is this one has a saw, and it doesn't close too well. Both of these were found on the street, by the way. I did not buy either of these. This one's got the clip blade and the saw. This one has, is this it? Yeah. This one has the nail file and the pair of scissors. And depending on what I was doing for the day, I would either grab the one with the scissor or the one with the saw. So if I was going out in the woods, I'd grab the one with the saw. If I was going to work or something, I grabbed the scissor one. So these two were also carried for a while, but I was really just going to concentrate on the Vingers that I'm sorry, the Victorinox knives that I tend to carry or carried the most. So honorable mentions going to these two Vingers over here. And now let's move on to the Victorinox knives that I carry the most. So this one here, I'll start here. This is the current knife that I have been carrying on my keychain. It is a Victorinox signature. And the signature part comes right here. Let's get it out. Right there. Little ink pen. And the ink pen is replaceable. You can pull it out, you push it in, it clicks in place, it stays on, and you got a little slide on the side here that goes up and down. Comes with a pair of scissors, and then the blades of your classic SD. You got your pen blade and the little nail file with the screwdriver tip. It is supposed to come with a pair of tweezers. I swapped the tweezers out for a toothpick because I use the toothpick more than the tweezers. So that is the knife that is on my keychain. It has been on my keychain for years now. Before that, I had a Midnight Manager on the keychain. That is pretty much the same as this, except this has the blades of a Rambler, so it also has the cap lifter with the Phillips screwdriver on it. And this also has a little red light on it, but it does have the ink pen still on the side here. So that was the Midnight Manager. This replaced it. I like the blades on the for the Rambler, and I might end up going back to this, but for my keychain knife, this is the one I have carried the most. I could have thrown both of these in, but I have carried this Midnight Manager more than I have carried this, but it's the role that it's being filled for. And that's why I'm not showing this one instead of this, because I'm looking at rolls also. And for keychain knives, the signature is my go-to, and that has been carried more than any other 58 millimeter Swiss Army knife, my signature. And the Midnight Manager just creeps into picture. This one, I've talked about this one I don't know how many times. This is my Woodsman. It's got the same blades as a Huntsman does, but it is missing the toothpick and tweezers. I carried this knife for well over 20 years. This was my main carry for the longest time. This is the knife I'm going to grow old with and everything else. Just a fantastic knife. Notice that? See that? It's a non-locking cap lifter screwdriver because of how old it is. It isn't worn out or anything. Got the little pin blade over here. It's been reprofiled because I nicked it. Got the pin blade over here. And then the saw and the scissors. Where's the saw? There's the old wood saw. I have cut down so many things with this wood saw. It's unbelievable. And still sharp as can be. And then obviously the scissors. Old style scissors with the screw that loosens up, so I've always had to tighten it. And if you notice, it looks like it's got a very funky back spring. That's because the back spring broke, but I don't care, it still works for the scissors. I bent it out. I could replace it, but I haven't bothered to. And like I said, this one of the most used Victorinox knives I got, my Woodsman. Now, after using the Woodsman for my EDC for the longest time, I tried out a different knife, and that was this one here. This is a Spartan Light, and if you notice, it's got a center-mounted Phillips driver, which is what really appealed to me with it. Otherwise, it's got the same blades as you find on your Spartan. You got your little blade, your big blade, can opener, and cap lifter, and on the back side you've got your corkscrew and your reamer with sewing eye. And if you notice here, this also has plus scales. So I have the ink pen on here. And that's real. These were aftermarket scales. I picked up scales for this and swapped them out. And that became my EDC for a year or two. It also has a light. And that was, at first I thought that was really cool. But the problem was the light kept coming on my pocket, and I was just going through batteries all the time. So I really just didn't like the light. So I gave up. Apparently I'm showing more than 5 knives after all. You knew that was going to happen, right? Any case, so I carried the Spartan Light for a while. I still like it, but just not crazy about the light part. It just did not work for me. So I replaced that with my current EDC in the Victorinox family, the Explorer. Now, this also did not come with plus scales, but I added them afterwards. And the main reason I chose the Explorer was I found that the saw blade on the Huntsman or the Woodsman, I just wasn't using it that often. Most of the time, I need the saw blade, the wood saw, when I am out in the woods. And for the most part, I'm not in the woods every day. I'm in an office every day. So I still needed the scissors. But I also found that I really could use a light-duty Phillips driver with me every day. Now, that would have been easy to solve. I could have grabbed the Super Tinker and I would have had the back-mounted Phillips driver. But I really don't like the back-mounted Phillips driver. I like it in-mounted. That's why I went with the Spartan Light. And I find this Phillips driver extremely useful, and I use it all the time. And when I was picking up the Explorer, it's like, I wonder, you know, I get it, the magnifying glass is on the other side. I don't know if I'll ever use it or not. But I found out that I end up using this all the time for looking at little details and everything, checking on tang stamps and everything else when I'm like at a garage sale or at the flea market or something. So it was like, wow, I never knew I really needed to carry a magnifying glass, but it turned out that I really could have been using one for some time. And obviously, just like with the Spartan Light, I have the little screwdriver there that is handy for my eyeglasses and other little details like cleaning out fingernails and such like that. This is an older corkscrew, the one that has the little line running through it, and so this the little screwdriver doesn't fit into it as well, but it does go in, and actually once you get it all the way down to where you need it down and it closes, that thing is nice and snug. It's not going anywhere. And like I said, it's got the plus scales, so once again I have an ink pen as well as the toothpick and the tweezers. And I've never been a big fan of these tweezers. I actually found that I thought the tweezers on the Wenger knives, actually I thought those worked a little bit better, but I'm getting used to using these, and I'm finding that they're not nearly as bad as I thought they were. They work a little bit better than I used to think. And if you notice, it's got a shoestring lanyard on there. That's the kind I use. I drop the knife in my pocket, the lanyard drops down with it, and then a little piece of string dangling out if I'm not worried about somebody knowing I have a knife. If I'm worried about somebody knowing I'm having a knife, I just shove the whole string in the pocket. The knife just sits there and rides in the pocket. And went with black because I couldn't get Hunter Green again, and I didn't want to pop them off of my Spartan Light. So that's why I've been carrying this Explorer Plus now for, probably going on 3 years now. So not nearly as long as I carried the Woodsman, but this is the one I like to carry, and I carry it all the time and really enjoy. let's move on to my outdoor Victorinox knives. So what we have over here is the Outrider, and it's an older one. It's got the slide lock on the side. I really prefer the slide lock. It's lighter. I'm not concerned that it's not a one-handed opening version or anything. I don't need a one-handed version knife because this is the knife I usually carry when I'm in the outdoors. If I go fishing or hiking or something like that, I usually have the Outrider with me, and I usually have a fixed blade with me. So if I need to use a knife that I need to open one-handed, I just use a fixed blade. The Outrider is the backup, and actually I'll have the Outrider with me. I'll also have this with me, and I'll have the Explorer with me. The Outrider is usually riding around in a little sheath, either on my tackle bag or on my waistband. So and the Outrider is a pretty nice knife. I don't know why I don't have a small screwdriver in there. I should put one in there. But you got your corkscrew, and then on the other side you have your reamer. And these are the same tools that you find on the, this is a 111 millimeter frame, but this is the same corkscrew and reamer that you find on the 91 millimeter knives. And then the can opener up here with the small Phillips driver. And on the other end over here, you have the older cap lifter screwdriver. Now later 111 millimeter knives will have a more substantial cap lifter screwdriver. It'll be a bigger knife. Hold on, I'll show you what it looks like. And so here's the Swiss soldier's knife, and you can see there, notice the difference in the cap lifter screwdriver on the later 111 millimeter knives. This is a one-handed opening Swiss soldier's knife. This is the same screwdriver or a cap lifter used on the 91 millimeter line of knives. This one, on the other hand, is the one that they designed specifically for the 111 millimeter knives. But you'll see here the can opener is the same can opener, the same tool. And that's the case with a lot of the 111 millimeter knives, with the exception of the main blades. Many of the tools are the same tools that you find on the 91 millimeter line of knives. Matter of fact, the 93 millimeter A-LOX knives that have a scissor, the Pioneer X, the scissor and is out of the 91 millimeter line, as well as the saw blades and stuff like that. They're interchangeable. But anyway, let's get back to the Outrider. Besides the front tools there, you have the back blade, the locking black blade with the slide lock. This one has a fine edge, which I kind of like. A lot of people don't like the slide lock. I like it. It locks fairly well. And, you know, is it 100% foolproof, won't break or anything else? No. If you want something like that, you're better off with a lock back than a liner lock even. But this works well, and really, I know people who can pull back and close it one-handed. I can't. I pull back with one hand and close with the other. I'm happy with that though. And then the other blade you have on here, where is it at? You got a saw blade, and the saw on here is definitely different than what you have on your 91 millimeter line of knives. And there's a variety of different saws that that show up. But let's get this saw out. You can see you got a definite extra little bit of length on that saw. Not a lot, but a little bit. And that makes all the difference in the world sometimes when you're cutting and everything, the length of that saw. You got about a ½ inch more, so that's pretty good. And the other tools you have in here is a pair of scissors, similar to what you have on the woodsman or the huntsman. So you've got the scissors, the saw blade, and everything else. Plus, hidden underneath the scissors, you have a #1 Phillips screwdriver. #1 because it's a little smaller than the #2 drivers that you have like here. Now the number 1 Phillips is not as handy as the number 2 Phillips. I would have much rather had the shorter number 2 Phillips, but I guess they just could not fit it into the frame. But you can loosen a number 2 Phillips with the number 1. Is just a little trickier, but the number 1 will work for smaller Phillips drivers. Did you notice how quick that closes? That's something I should warn you about. Watch that. Boom. You don't have to get it to the half place. Once it gets to right about here, boom. And you want your scissors open when you're closing that Phillips driver. Otherwise, it is just going to slam right down on top of your scissors. So that's something to watch out for on that. So that is a learning curve for the knife. But I'm not here for the Phillips on this knife. If I wanted to use a Phillips, I've got a number 2 Phillips right there. What I liked about it was the fact that you got the scissors and the saw. So it's got the tools that I find on my Huntsman, but it's on a larger frame and it feels good in the hand. A lot of people say, "Oh man, all that blade up there just doesn't feel good." You don't grab them like that. Let's face it, you don't. No one's grabbing their pocket knife like that and squeezing real hard. And when you're using the main blade, everything down there is really nice and it feels good. So that's why I picked the Outrider, and this is my go-to outdoor knife. Now, before the Outrider was my go-to outdoor knife, the German Army knife was my go-to outdoor knife, and actually for a long time this was my everyday carry knife, the German Army knife. Now, as I mentioned in a couple videos, this was a knife I traded for when I was in the Army. I traded with a German soldier. He got a Camillus demo knife, and I got this knife, a German Army knife, complete with corkscrew, and really nice long punch blade there. And then the saw blade with the combo tool at the end here. This is actually a can opener and a cap lifter plus a screwdriver, and really nice little saw blade. I cut 2-inch, 3-inch thick trees down with this knife with no problem, and we're talking about cutting a tree down with this knife in like 5 minutes. And then finally you got a really nice long spear blade. The problem is I'm cheating when I say, oh, my go-to Victorinox Swiss Army knife, because as you see there, CCM Rostfrei. So CCM company out of Germany, and Rostfrei, we know what that is, stainless steel in German. So this is not actually a Victorinox Swiss Army knife in any shape or form. However, I do have one of these, and so I guess I just transfer over anytime somebody says favorite Swiss Army knife, or one that I've used the most. Yeah, I did not really use the Swiss Army version of this a lot, but I did use this one for a long time. And if I were to recommend a knife to carry, this would definitely be one of them. This would be one of my top 5 Swiss Army knives. And this one, as you can see, is Victorinox Switzerland Stainless Rostfrei. And it is a later version of the same German Army knife with the combo tool and everything else. You've got the shield that goes over the blade, the saw blade. And it also has a nail file here, which is a nice handy thing to have too, so they added to it. And the nail file can also be used for striking matches and such, so that's good. Your I guess you could say strike anywheres or whatever. And same main blade and everything. Nice and tight. I'm going to have to clean it up a bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turn corkscrew. And the nice long punch. So I do have one of these, a German Army knife by Victorinox. It's not the one I carried, but it is the one that I'm recommending for my top 5. So the 108 millimeter German Army knife, the Outrider, those are my go-to outdoor knives. The little Signature, that is my go-to keychain knife. My current EDC everyday pocket carry knife is my Explorer Plus with well, Explorer Plus. I don't have to say it any other way, you know. So you got the ink pen going on, the eyeglass screw, the magnifying glass, and the Phillips driver and scissors, and then, well, my old pal, the Woodsman, which served me well for well over 18, 20 years or so. So there's my top 5 Swiss Army knives. Yeah, this one was kind of a poser, and I have used other knives for quite some time, but in general, those are the longest used 58 millimeter knives, my 2 longest used 91 millimeter knives for everyday carry, and my 2 longest used patterns of knives used when out in the woods and such. And like I mentioned, this knife, this was an EDC and a wood knife, outdoor wood knife for the longest time. So there you go. There's my Victorinox top 5 Swiss Army knives. I'll probably do some other top 5s in the Victorinox line of knives, but these are the ones that were the most used. Well, most used with that qualifier.